welcome to this nice little chat here. We've got two highly esteemed gentlemen who are very prominent in the iGaming industry, and we're very privileged today to have them along to ask them some questions about a deal that they put together, which is quite exciting. So let's start off with if you guys could just introduce one another, please. Fred from Yggdrasil and Enrico from IGT Play Digital. And just tell us a little bit about where you are as companies right now, and then we'll get into some questions around, you know, this great deal you put together and how that's gonna change things in the market.
Hi, my name is Fred. Been in the company for quite some time, from the PowerPoint until now. In a good spot, as we think we are. Working in online gaming, casino provisioning, and we are having, you know, a lovely, thanks to Enrico and his team, sign a deal with them for entering the US market. What we've done in Europe is probably everyone knows already, and we're very happy about that. So thanks for the meeting, Steve.
Good to have you, Fredrik. Thanks a lot. Enrico?
Thank you, Steve. My name is Enrico. I'm original Italian, now living in the United States, where I'm running IGT Play Digital, which is the digital and sports betting arm of IGT that I founded in 2018 by pulling together different pieces of technology, assets, and most importantly, people from all over the world, and legacy businesses and acquisition that both IGT and GTech did in the past. And right now we're focusing more and more on two things. The first is sports betting solution, which is not the hot topic for today, but the second, which is the real topic for today, are online contents, casino contents, slots, table games, mainly present in North America, both United States and Canada, where I think our games come from naturally, because they've been developed originally for these markets. And now, finally, we cut a very nice partnership with Fred and Yggdrasil to commercialize their games in this very exciting and growing North American market. So thank you, Steve, for having us today. Very excited about this.
Great, thanks a lot. Yeah, so just tell us a bit about the partnership and what it entails, and how it's going to work, please, guys. I mean, who wants to take that? Enrico?
Yeah, I think we've been pulled together. We've been introduced by this rude and unpleasant English gentleman who used to be a former executive in a very well-known company, and now is supporting company to expand. No, but jokes apart, we wouldn't be here today and together, Steve, without you. So I think you envisioned since the beginning the potential of the unique and incredible contents Yggdrasil developed and is still developing nowadays, and alongside our assets, which is good knowledge of these markets and good network, both operators and footprint. So that make us the natural partner to better launch and commercialize Yggdrasil games. So that's the way the idea came up. We got some discussion about how to structure the partnership, and to be honest, now that we are about to launch the first game, we're very excited about that. Fred, what do you think?
You're taking over Steve's role there. You know, I've been with this company for quite some time, actually from the inception to where we are now. And we've been focusing a lot about, you know, creating the best company you can imagine in Europe, you know, monetizing the potentials that we have there, going to regulate the markets and so forth. We've done that. And you know, the business model grown from being a studio to an aggregator as well. And I think our aggregation model that we build in Europe seems to be extremely efficient. And when the company, myself as a shareholder, together with other shareholders, we were thinking about let's look into the the North American region, how do we go about to do it? And we were looking at it, say, we're going to go all in, we're going to find a partner. And we spent a lot of time on that. We said, let's go and find a partner and how to approach that, which is a bit defensive, maybe, but on the other hand, it's very aggressive. Depends on who you find as a partner. And we coming in with our platform and technology and all that, we felt like, you know what, if you find the right partner, then we go. If we don't find the right partner, then we go have a different strategy. And I think we found the right partner in IGT. You know, cultural similarities. You know, there's a legacy, or let's say there's a history from Europe that we kind of feel comfortable with in ownership. There's a full-on understanding and distribution in the North American market. We feel like very interesting, and I also feel like we have something to bring from a technical point of view. So I think it's a really, really good match in this partnership, and we started with a couple of games, and let's see what the hell's going to lead to.
Great, I'm glad I could be of assistance in making that happen. So I'm glad you guys are getting along well. I thought you might be. Well, that might be the case. So what about the content then? So can you tell us a bit about the games and how it's going to work, and you know what your expectations are? I mean, how's this going to get actually really come to fruition and actually execute more than the press release? You know, how's it going to actually happen for you guys and for the customers?
Yeah, if you want, I can start answering the question from our perspective. Maybe just one step back, share, as Fred did, the rationales for us to enter into this partnership. I think that the type of contents IGT developed and launched so far, and that's our core business, are mainly games that are developed for the retail, the land-based markets and players, and down the road we develop a formula to transform, to port those games from retail to digital. And this is where where we are very much specialized into, and the really solid base for us to grow business. But clearly this is not enough. So as player base are growing in variety, and they really need and want to play different games. So something like Yggdrasil games, their style, quality, richness, and the game mechanics are something that is not known in the United States and Canadian market, in the North American market. And we both strongly believe that these contents can be successful. So flowing those incredible contents within our networks, and so they're to complement our offer, I think is the very powerful rationale and proposition underneath this partnership.
That's great. Thanks a lot for giving us that. So Fred, where do these games come from? Are they ones that are proven titles in Europe, or did you pick them specifically because you think that they may appeal to US players, or what's the rationale behind how you've chosen those 8 games?
Well, we have some experience nowadays in game quality, and the game we produce in general are more universal. We haven't developed any game to target a certain market, say this game is for the US market, these games are for that. Well, I do understand that there's certain mechanics very true to, let's say, the LATAM side, the Japanese side, and so forth. But from a slots perspective, it is more similar than what people actually believe there are. There is an experience in the user experience that might be more similar than they're used to, but everything is more around quality and the experience for the player, the excitement, that it can cross borders, to be honest. So, and we are very keen on bringing that to the partnership with Enrico and his friends and with IGT. We are very, very interested in bringing that to the guys there, and we know it's going to work because we have we have friends that also in the US market that has come from Europe, operators from Europe establishing now themselves in the US market, and we kind of get some stats and feedbacks from them, so we know what works. So the quality works no matter what, and there are certain discrepancies or differences that it's more like in mechanics, that certain things work in Japan, they don't understand what we are doing in kind of Europe. But besides that, it's a lot of similarities, and the stuff that we see that work in Europe will also work in the United States.
So I guess a good game's a good game. Is that what you're saying? Wherever it is.
It's always in the user. It's always in the UX. It's all UX, the math and the UX. That's what it is all about.
Okay, and Enrico, do you think that the US players are looking for something specific, very much orientated around you have a very successful business around the kind of land-based casino titles. How do you see that, complement those things coming together, and how do you see the content flow going into the US and Yggdrasil plugging that gap for you guys?
Yeah, I would say that definitely the way US players are consuming games, at least during these early times of the market, because beside New Jersey, which is a few years old market, everything else is no older than a couple of years. So this is really at the beginning. So. I think that it's and as the operators, at least in a good amount of cases, are also operating business on land based. They're leveraging their player based journeys. They are evolving, and especially those are not the only players that operators are acquiring. So especially the most recent acquisitions. In terms of player base, are more looking for more entertaining games, more time on device, more rich games, more entertaining games. So I think here is where obviously there's a lot of offer in Europe for this kind of game, but there's nothing like Yggdrasil in terms of quality, in terms of so for example the graphics and the richness of the characters they're developing. This is just unique, right? And alongside their game features, which really, contribute to further entertain the player, that's quite unique. So when it's come to offer the US and Canadian players something different, it couldn't be just whatever. It should be something extremely qualitative, extremely well defined in terms of positioning and what it is. And I just have no doubt this is gonna hit the market, and it's gonna be played a lot because it's new, it's different, it's rich, it's entertaining, and most importantly is highly qualitative, which is something that the North American player clearly wants to see. So in Europe, there's a lot of content down there, a lot everywhere. Not necessarily all of it's highly qualitative. What we're seeing so far is that North American player wants extremely highly qualitative games, not just copy-paste kind of things.
So they're looking for quality over quantity, then, is really what you're saying, and not just kind of burn through a load of titles and then move forward. What do you see the key differences comparing the European market and the US market then in terms of that? I mean, obviously we see a lot of stepper games and these kind of things doing very well actually still in the US, but you don't see those in Europe, and they're considered sort of old fashioned. But do you see that evolving much more like Europe, where there'll be a quantity over quality type approach, or do you think that because of the barriers to entry and various other elements that this will take longer and people will be more focused on quality over time? Do you see that being the primary driver on this?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. So high qualitative, highly volatile, and also highly denom games, because One of the biggest difference, for example, is the cost to cover, as we call it, so the minimum bet, in other words. So in the North American markets is higher compared to Europe. So it's making that every spin, it's just worth more. So that's one of the reasons why.
But that's increasing. But that's increasing.
Yeah, and that's increasing.
They're cutting that, I think every 6 months they're kind of increasing that because it's not viable to have it too low, to be honest. So I think there's where the online and the land-based are kind of harmonizing. And I think you're going to see a lot more the harmonizing going forward in everything, whether it is the kind of a evolution about the new features and mechanics and the adaptation of the target group and so forth. It is getting much more closer than it ever was before. I mean, when we sit and talk, me and Enrico, about this, we were like, he come from his side, I come from my side, and we have a different agenda, different talking points, basically. But I hear more and more, the longer the sessions goes, we are getting closer and closer to a similar world about things. And I think that's very, very, very interesting, Everything from innovation to adaptation and regulation. I think all of those things are getting closer and closer, between the online. We talked about online and land-based, but today, digital, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the European market is very different in terms of it's much more evolved and mature, and you've got things like streamers, which you don't have in the US right now, and a lot of people pushing there. But it's going to start. One of my questions was around, how do you see this evolving now, where it goes beyond the sort of land-based titles, and that's just part of the ecosystem, and then these things converging. Do you think you're going to see that in the next couple of years, or do you think that's going to take a lot longer to get where that is from in Europe, right?
Another big difference between Europe and North America, at least when it comes to the industry now, without talking about content specifically, is the operators' nature. Meaning, in Europe, there are multiple of them, while here they're limited in the number of license and skin that can be granted. That's the first thing. So there's a clear limit to the number of operators. And secondly, that was mentioned before, and at least this applies to the market leaders. Think about BetMGM, Caesar, Penn, and so on. They all come from land-based, so they're naturally omni-channels operators, and that's the other big difference compared to Europe, where basically there are very small number of them, beside the flatters or yes the Entain of the situation, but they have different and multiple brands across countries. But I think that omnichannel is definitely a way for us to differentiate from the US, from the European market, and for us as AGT, and in partnership, for example, with Yggdrasil, to be really different from the rest of the pack, because just we can offer the same thing across the board. So one of the most successful program that we have in Canada is called Powerbox, which is a jackpot, and jackpot is another thing that is very much played and appreciated by non-American players. This jackpot is contributed simultaneously from land-based and mobile or online games. So two people are contributing to the same jackpot. And this is something that in Canada became very popular and is very much played. It's something that I don't think there's something similar that exists in the European market. So those are just examples about how different the market could be. But then on the other side, greatest hits tends to work on both sides of the ocean. So when you take Cleopatra, when you take, I'm pretty sure, Vikings Go Wild, or you take some other very well-known content from our respected competitors, they work on both sides at the same way. So they're very successful games.
Exactly. I think that is such a good thing from Enrico to say that. I mean, I think that all big developments derived, in terms of disruptions, comes from the user experience. Whether it's some mechanical drive from the Cleopatra game in the beginning, or a new development of a new game, or a new mechanical framework and so forth. That is completely understood by everyone that understands anything about the gambler, or any user understands as a user experience will drive development of any new big paradigm shift. And I actually do think that the partnership between us here today that we've done has some potential around that stuff. We see, we know what IGT have done historically. They have invested a lot in their own UX. They developed some mechanics. I mean, one of the first games that I actually got engaged to was Kitty Glitter. I'm not sure Enrico will remember that, but that was one of my favorite games when I started to I came from sports betting side, and I didn't really understand about, who understands anything about playing slot games? I didn't understand that. It was too stupid. But when I really understand the underlying part of slot games, it actually hooked me a lot to me engaging in the whole industry, right? And I actually have to say that I think that IGT and the whole family behind it and so forth has done a lot of good things around the play experience, because they actually managed to get a lot of people engaged in it from a business point of view. They understand that this was something tangible, something interesting to get into, including myself. So
building on the legacy, then
just,
will you be able to integrate into the you're planning on opening up more sort of feature led, so jackpot led, or more sort of feature gamification type together? Is that how it's
well, Steve, here's the thing. I gotta say this. I think we all that went into the online section very early, we were never thinking a lot about intellectual property. We were thinking about monetizing someone else's intellectual property. And I think Enrico and the whole IGT there, one of them we wanted to monetize. So we tried to do anything we could to be inspired from, all the land-based guys to monetize as much as we could without getting fucking sued, of course. And so we did. But I think that we learned a lot from that. I mean, our drive was driving development and distribution close to the player, user experience, and so forth. We didn't really was driving the actual game mechanics and so forth. And I don't think it's after the last 5 years, some of them have been very much better than that the online side has been much better into actually not just looking at distribution and experience from a device point of view, more from a game point of view, which used to be where the guys like IGT, and their friends, which used to be the guys who own that space. Now I think online kind of own that space, because the iteration between new games, new mechanics, trying it, put out the market is so much faster. So the online section kind of notices a lot more than the online based.
But do you think I mean, I see in Europe, in the US particularly, that in Europe that people focus on players, game developers focus on the players, whereas when you meet US companies who are putting in games, and I wouldn't include IGT as part of this actually, by the way, but they don't really talk about players. They just talk about the customers in terms of the casino floors, because they're used to supplying casinos and not getting involved directly with the players. Whereas in Europe, you're now, it's part of the ecosystem to actually go to the streamers and go to all these people who drive the traffic through and actually have a relationship with them. And so do you think that, I mean, that makes the game developers have to be much more player led? And do you think that's why there's a much more focus on features and how that's kind of brought to bear? Or do you think it's just because you have to innovate around the fact there's so many offerings out in the market, or all of that?
I think it's both. I think it's all of that. I mean, the development cycles are so much quicker in the online sector. And I mean, as I said, when I've been involved in disrupting this industry from the online sector a few times, and it all worked tremendously well. Back in that time, we disrupted it by providing seamless wallet. We broke down the whole digital wallet fund transfer into seamless wallet stuff. That was like big disruption, changed the whole landscape. And then we did the in-game bonus tools that we did back in, with YGG stuff, and it changed the whole landscape. And I would say that the other one, the others have done the same thing, but it's kind of, and then again, the whole thing around the mechanical developments on games has kind of escalated in the digital landscape. So it's so easy now to understand what's a great game, what's not a great game. So I'm just saying this, my fear is that what you're putting up now in the land-based landscape is going to feel historical, like a dinosaur, once you even put it on the floor. Before, we all looked, I looked, we looked, everyone looked at whatever was going to put on the floor on the Vegas shows was going to be copied 1 year later or 18 months later. Now it's the other way around. I don't even think that people are going to look for innovation in the land-based.
What don't I think? I think going on Enrico's point though, and looking at the US, and maybe you can come in on this, Enrico, but I think what I'm liking about it, the market in the US at the moment, is there isn't so many entrants right now, so it's not thousands of games, so people aren't under pressure to launch 15 games a week. They are, and that means that the games are getting their day in the sun again properly once they're launched, and there's a real opportunity for the operators to promote those and actually give them. You can work out what's good and what's not good. I think in Europe, you get a steady stream of games, and people, it's taking a year to build these games sometimes. And some of the titles that we would have seen, the next Cleopatra, the next Vikings Go Wild, these things may be getting lost because they're just not given the time on their day in the sun to actually perform. And I think maybe that's an opportunity in the US. Do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. You're right. So at this juncture, the market is meaning operators are definitely looking for quantity for games to be launched, but at the same time as the content offer is ramping up, but is still far from what we're seeing in Europe in terms of quantity and variety. I think that a good games definitely has a much bigger chance to prove itself, and when it works, there's typically a lot of appetite from operators to keep it up and continue promoting it. We experienced that several times now when hitting some because sometimes it's just a surprise. You're launching a game you do not believe is gonna be so successful. It's like with a movie, but sometimes it is, and there's a lot that can be taken out from a successful content. So I think that is in this sense the market is so much green still.
So maybe that'll give the balance to allow these games that Fred's talking about and some of these features to really bed in the market, and maybe that'll make it a slightly different market to the rest of the world potentially.
Yes, because look, the ultimate question is the following to me. So on land-based, people are taking their car to go to some property for multiple reasons. For the kind of machines and tables they have, for restaurants, entertainment, so thinking about Las Vegas, and they will find IGT games like anyone else games. Same if they go to one property or to the other. When it's come to online, the really ultimate question is, will player access their wallet, their accounts, no matter if it's abc.com or def.com, just because they want to play either Cleopatra or Vikings Go Wild. So how much are we gonna able in the long run to really stick players to contents, to titles, and to certain kind of player experience behind what the operator are doing. So I don't want to sound like I'm trying to commoditize our customers. We'll never do that. But I think that compared to retail, we really have the opportunity to build brands around games and to make them recognizable and to be the real and ultimate reason for players to come over and look for the contents rather than look for the operator.
And how do you feel like so Apple's rules in the US is pretty much, well, I think they're the same in Europe, but they don't get enforced in the same way. So it means that for a number of people on mobile, certainly in native, you're only able to actually have a certain amount of games. And so how do you see that affecting the way that games are selected and pushed in the US landscape?
No, I think that, ultimately, or at least based on our most recent experience, but we never faced any major challenge when it comes to bring our contents live somewhere. So between the fact that we know the local weeds about how to get there and how to go live, and we have long established relationship with operators. Typically, when we're offering in new games, there's unless there's a major things, but otherwise there are no barriers for this game to go live, to be honest.
Okay, great. So, I mean, let's talk quickly about the markets, because obviously there's 5 states live now, and Connecticut and West Virginia are fairly small compared to the big 3. And Pennsylvania obviously has got a very high tax rate on the slot games. But do you see that being the market for now, and then Ontario coming online in a regulated way? But obviously I know IGT's in the wider Canada as well. Does this include all of that? And then what do you see as being the next states maybe coming along, and how do you see that affecting the market in North America?
Yeah, no, this is an excellent question. Look, if we look what happened in the last 3 years, I think it's fair to say that the US market just made something like ×3 probably, or something like that. And this is the combination of new states going live, such as Pennsylvania and Michigan, talking about sizable states, but also the fact that within those states, both the number of players and the average revenue per user, RPU, they've both been growing quite significantly. And then you take New Jersey, which is an 8 to 9 years old market, is still growing, like 30-40% year over year, and and this is, I'm talking about 21. So 2 things. First, I think we will see and experience continued growth from these new markets because they're still new. So Michigan is not, it didn't blow the first candle yet. So this is just at the very infancy. So I think we definitely expect these markets to continue to grow quite significantly, and then other new markets will come. Recently, IGT hosted an investor day, and when it comes to Play Digital, in our view, we said that we see at least 6 new states regulating iGaming between now and 2025. So you ask me which states, we might have some discussion around that, but the point is that sports betting regulation sets in motion a big machine. 33 states passed the legislation for sports betting. 22 out of 33 are including mobile sports betting. So in those states, both the player, the people, and the regulators and the legislatures are familiar with safe, regulated mobile wagering experience. In a way or another, they will extend that to other sort of games. So I think it's just a matter of time and find the right moment for those legislators to do their job. But this, and alongside the influence, big companies such as BetMGM, such as MGM, Flutter, DraftKings, all the big guys are putting in the same states to extend the mobile sports also to mobile casino. This is a very powerful set of forces that are pushing everything towards the same goal, which is regulate more iGaming. So I don't see how this can be stopped. Maybe it might slow down a bit after this incredible rush. Yeah, maybe, but eventually more and more states will come, including Canada. I think that what is going to happen in Ontario, it will definitely mark the roads to more states and regions in Canada to move from the monopolistic to a full competitive model. So I just can't think but very positive and optimistic about the North America market expansion as we move forward.
So Fred, you run a very successful aggregation business in the European markets. How do you see aggregation in the US? And I guess this isn't part of this current deal, but how do you see that? It's obviously a very different area. Do you kind of plan to try and do something in that area in the US too?
Well, first I want to see I see the development. The cork has been in the industry for quite some time, and I see the developments happening in the United States now, or even North America, including some of the Canadian states there, compared to Europe, and also how Europe have developed in the last regulated spot in Steve. So we were in there, and even Enrico seen it. It's been dramatically dynamically changed over the years, and I actually think that state by state, the landscape in the United States will catch up to where we are in Europe much quicker than the whole evolution that we're going through in Europe. It's going to be much quicker from a financial, regulatory, and so forth point of view, without a doubt. With the pitfalls and the opportunities that you can find there. Absolutely, and that's why I find it so interesting is going forward the partnership with IGT as well, because I think we have IGT has had their experience back in the days from poker industry in Europe for X years ago. Maybe not the best experience, came in late, and so forth, and compare that to where we are today. And if I just look at our model, now I'll come back to really addressing your question, Steve. I would say that, Yggdrasil, YGG as we call it, we have developed a model where we develop games on our own intellectual property. We also develop mechanical framework, and we license them to our studios. We also run a third-party studio development network coming into our network. So we have this kind of as part of our business model, right? And if you talk to our strategy for the United States, let's say it was a very, very deliberate decision after quite some time in finding the best strategy and partnership for North America. We were even contemplating going into North America on our own. From various reasons, which I should not go into here, we decided not to go into there on our own. And we decided instead to go in there with some partner. We, of course, in that stage evaluated the partners. And of course, IGT was one of the potential ones. And we kind of decided some point there and said, if we can enter into this partnership with IGT, I think it's going to be a good win-win for both of the companies. The reason as well why we did not want to go in to that on our own was that if we go in, we're going to end up in a position where we have to go kind of all into that and leave game development, aggregation model development, and all of that we were really, really good at, and we got a lot of return investment on, and spent a lot of money into going into the North American market. And we said, is that really the way forward? And me together being a shareholder, together with the others, we just decided pretty quickly, let's find another way forward. And we not ended up with where we came to a conclusion together with IGT that this is going to be the best way forward. So it means that you have different pieces of the puzzle, and in our case, we have developed our piece of the puzzle to fit pretty good into a partner there, even though our business model is pretty good standalone in what we do, but there is some certain positive synergies in the partnership with Enrico and his team there for the North American market, without a doubt.
Great. So what I'm thinking, what you're referring to then is really around regulation, right? There's a significant barrier to entry in regulation, which I guess once you collaborate on these things, it becomes a much easier thing for both parties in order to exploit the opportunity ahead of you.
Well, I will say one thing from a games point of view and a game operation. I mean, Yggdrasil is in, I don't know how many gaming regulations, either as a host or supplier, sheltered or have certificates and so forth in all the European countries and so forth. Like, it's just crazy, plenty, so many. So that's not the case. But the shareholders at some point came to a conclusion. I'm one of them. We said it doesn't make sense to now go into do all of that. Let's first see, can we find a fruitful partnership with some of the North American big players, and there are not a lot of them. There are a few, there are a handful, and say, can we find a fruitful partnership, that we can work with, and Enrico and his teams, was a good match.
Okay.
And you can understand one thing: we have in our side, we have private equity guys, and we have entrepreneurs in there. So to get that kind of fit, it's not that easy, because there's different kinds of a wish list, in a partnership. But I think Enrico and IGT, during this partnership evaluation, was fulfilled all the criteria. So we're very happy.
Right. No, Enrico, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, if I can add just one thing. Fred said something very, very true. So
for once,
a lot of things, but when you said that, you cannot just enter the US, like opening another country, another jurisdictions. You can't. I mean, that's always true, but especially here. But you can do things midways and say, look, with my right hand, I'm taking care of my biggest market. With my left hand, I think about how opening and launching US. This market can be extremely rewarding if you're here, if you invest time on understanding how to make it work, how to get the players, how to satisfy them. So you have to find your way to enter the market, which is not just kind of partnership with an operators and take the games that are working in some markets and copy paste it and launch it. That's not the way it works. This requires, again, time, investment, quality, attention. If you get there and if you know how to do that, then it might be, as I said, extremely rewarding. So that's the reason why I think Fred and Yggdrasil made a good call. Now on partnering with someone who at least knows how to deal with the local way to do and to conduct this business. Then we can be better or not. Then time will tell us, and I'm pretty optimistic about that. But he's absolutely right. So you cannot just improvise and jump on a plane, land with your luggage, and say, okay, let's do business now. That's not the way it works. And I think what happened with sports betting, with a lot of people who are still hanging around in the airports because they didn't make it through immigration. Yeah, but that's it. I mean, one of the reasons why this is the biggest and the richest country in the world is because they know how to do business. They know how to defend and protect their business, right? So that's part of the game. So I see why there's a value from someone so successful and so big like Yggdrasil to come over to US. They could have done it on their own, but precisely because of this reason, I think, and this is something Fred and I discussed quite a lot, they decided to set up a partnership with us, and I think this is right. I mean, not only because I'm very happy about the partnership, but I think that's the right way to do it, honestly.